Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to day 7 of palette week. We have made it to the last day. I am hoping this video makes it up on time on Wednesday. I am filming this on Tuesday. I was planning to film this yesterday morning before work, but I got so sick yesterday. My daughter was sick on Friday. I thought I was in the clear, and then I woke up Monday morning, like very early in the morning, and just started puking everywhere. And at one point, as I was puking, I was like, okay, now I feel better. Like, let's go get the makeup on and start filming. That did not happen. We were actually not feeling well at all. I literally slept the entire day yesterday. So, I'm feeling mostly better today, but if my energy feels like a little bit off, that's the dealio. But I'm hoping that I can edit this and then get it up tomorrow, but if it's a day late, I do apologize. Anyway, I am so excited to be bringing you this video. It is going to be ranking the last 11 palettes I've tried. So I have 11 newer-ish eyeshadow palettes to the market, and I am going to be ranking them from my least favorite all the way to my favorite. I will say, I was going to do this. I had like a tiered ranking system last year where I gave like a numerical value to the palettes, and I thought about doing that again, but it was just kind of taking the fun out of this for me, and it was almost getting like too analytical. Now I do have information about like shadow quality, packaging, etc., but I'm not actually giving like a numerical value to the palettes anymore, and I hope that's okay. I feel like reading through the comments of some of those videos, many of you were like, you know what, it's makeup, it's supposed to be fun, like you don't have to provide a numerical value. But I have some really good eyeshadow palettes in front of me. I will say even my bottom like 2 aren't bad, but there's definitely some things that I could, you know, some things that could make the palette better. I will also say I've been fiddling around with my camera settings, and I am just struggling with figuring my camera settings out, and I feel like I fiddled with them so much I can't even remember how to get them back to like where I was at. So if my lighting is off, just bear with me as I try to figure it out. But if you guys are interested in how I would rank the last 11 palettes that I've tried, stay tuned for this. If you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit chatting about makeup, I'd love for you to consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. Okay, I turned my lighting down a little bit. I hope this is better. Anyway, you guys, as I said, even my bottom couple of palettes are not bad palettes. I feel like it's really hard to find like something that's truly bad in this day and age of makeup, but I do have some things to kind of like, I do have a bone to pick with a couple of the bottom palettes. So this one kind of hurts my heart, but coming in at the very bottom is going to be the Space Chemistry palette from Terra Moons. This is what this eyeshadow palette looks like. It is very beautiful, and when I saw this teased, I was super excited about this. One, because I really love Terra Moons singles. They make some of my favorite single eyeshadows. What I've come to find is I feel like I've really, as I reflect on the shadows that I have from them, I feel like typically it's usually a shade I love on the inner corner, which kind of, we'll get into like why I'm like, I should have thought about that. But I was really excited that it was kind of like a curated palette, and then there was 2 matte shadows, and the matte shadows were like neutral brown shades. So I was really excited about this. This palette, I'm going to be reading off of my computer some, so if I'm looking this way, you guys know why. So this palette retails for $75, which is a hefty price. I think this is my most expensive palette out of the ones that I'm reviewing today. So there's 12 eyeshadows in here, and I will say I was going to break this down cost per ounce, but it's really hard to find the weight on some of these palettes, so I really just broke it down cost per shade. Now granted, a palette may have 12 shades, whereas another one might have 15, but if you break it down by weight, one has more weight. I get it. We're just gonna break it down by shade though. So cost per shade in this eyeshadow palette is $6.25, which is also my most expensive cost per shade. It did cost me $7.44 to have this palette shipped. And I believe I did use a code for this palette. I want to say Amy Loves Makeup has a code for Terra Moon, so I did use a code. But those are the fees without a code. There are 4 different finishes within this eyeshadow palette. There's 2 mattes, 4 duochromes, 2 metallic shimmers, and 4 multi-chromes. And I knew going into this that this was mostly going to be a companion palette. Like I said, I was excited that there were 2 matte shades. I kind of wish there was a little bit more of a differentiation between the 2 matte shades in this palette. And I will say I am not impressed with the mattes. They are so incredibly powdery. There's so much kick up. I'm thinking like Subculture Gate. Like there is that much kick up in these shades. So I'm not a huge fan of the matte shades in here. And while I think the other shades in this palette are absolutely stunning and so beautiful, it is the longevity within this eyeshadow palette that I just cannot get behind. I don't know that I can recommend spending $75 on this eyeshadow palette because I don't feel like I get a full even 8 hours of wear for these shadows. I feel like depending on which shadow I'm using, I really only get 5 to 6 hours of wear before it really starts to flake off, to come off. Even when I'm using a glitter glue, I use a glitter glue every time that I do my makeup or do my eyeshadow, and I just really struggle with the longevity, and so it's really hard for me to justify recommending this eyeshadow palette for $75. Now I will say the shade Moonwater is so stunning. This is like one of my most dreamy silvery blue. I love a silvery blue shade. I love that. I also really like the shade Light Particle, which is this really beautiful kind of like yellowy sort of shade. But I think Light Particle is going to be a really beautiful inner corner highlight. Like I said, as I reflect, I think I love Terra Moon's single shadows because they make a really beautiful inner corner highlight. But all over the lid, I was just finding that there wasn't the longevity there. And so for that reason, I just really cannot rank this palette any higher. I did find that these shades, all shades except for the matte shades, apply best with a finger. Some of them I don't feel like you can apply at all with a brush just because they're like that flakier texture, which doesn't bother me, but it really just, I was really disappointed in the longevity of the shadows with this eyeshadow palette. So this one is my number 11. Would love to know if you've tried this or if you've noticed the same thing with other Terra Moon's palettes. Let me know. Or singles. There might be a theme here when it comes to longevity, because my number 10, I also struggled a little bit with longevity, and this one pains me so much to put this in the number 10 spot. But truly, when I look at the rest of the palettes and I think about the quality, it wouldn't be fair to rank this one any higher. So coming in the number 10 spot, I have the Lethal Cosmetics Midnight Serenade palette. Now this eyeshadow palette is so stunning. I love the mix of mattes and shimmers. My one thought as I look through the matte shadows is I would maybe want one shade, like trade out one of the deeper shades for something a little bit lighter. I do have the shade Crescent here, which, you know, can be light enough, but that is like my one complaint when it comes to the mattes. However, when it comes to the metallic shades, I again felt like I really got like maybe 6 to 7 hours of like good wear before it really started to like crumble away. Now I created some looks with this eyeshadow palette that I absolutely loved, but unfortunately those looks really started to like fade away towards the last few hours of wear, which is just so disappointing. I did get some compliments on a couple of looks that I wore with this palette, so I enjoy this. And if I was going somewhere where I only needed my makeup to last for like 5 hours and then I was going home and it was gonna be fine, like maybe we're just going out for like drinks at night, like I will pull this palette out. It is stunning. The color story, the shades of the shimmers, I love. I feel like in terms of like a shimmer color story, I couldn't ask for anything more. Really, my only gripe with this palette is longevity, but longevity is so important. So that's why I had to rank this one at number 10. This one retails for $45, so this is my least expensive palette of all the ones I'll be ranking today. I paid $10.99 for shipping with this palette. There's 15 shades, and the cost per shade in this eyeshadow palette is $3, which is not actually this is not the least expensive palette I'm ranking. I'm so sorry, but it obviously comes in at the lower end. I can't remember if I had a code for this one as well. Always look for a code, you guys. Like I swear someone always has a code. This palette comes with 4 different shadow formulas. You're getting mattes, metallics, duochromes, and triochromes in this eyeshadow palette. Anyway, I love the color story of this palette. I couldn't rank this one any higher because truly the longevity just wasn't there for me. We are on to number 9, and I would say like quality from this palette on up really is there. It really is good. I really struggled to rank the rest of these palettes, and I will say as I've been testing each of these palettes out, every time I test a new palette out, I'm like, whoa, I swear this is gonna be my new favorite palette of the year. So there have been some great palettes that I've tried this year. I will also note, you guys, I must try each shade in every palette at least one time before I come on to review, just so you know. I set that as like a standard for myself. But coming in at number 9, I have this one from Nars. This is the Nars Afterglow Irresistible Eyeshadow Palette. This is what this one looks like. Beautiful palette, beautiful color story, beautiful quality. This obviously is more of a rosy toned palette, which is not typically my preference, but I love Nars products, so I knew it wasn't going to be my favorite color story of all time, just in terms of I would prefer something more like brown leaning than rosy leaning. But I knew that it had a bunch of the like lid topper shades that I love from Nars. So I was super excited to be purchasing this one. Now this retails for $60. You're getting 12 shades. So it comes down to $5 per shadow. I personally ordered this off of the Sephora website, and I don't pay for shipping when I order from Sephora. So I didn't pay for shipping with this one. There are 5 different shadow formulas in this Nars palette. So in this palette, you're getting mattes, a smooth satin, gleaming glimmer, a shimmer, and also a sparkling shadow. In terms of quality and longevity, blendability, I would say 10 out of 10 for everything. I always have really good luck with Nars palettes, with the exception of the Nars Climax palette. I struggled with their mattes, but the mattes blended really, really nice. My one complaint in terms of this color story would be I would love to have one lighter matte shade. I feel like the mattes are pretty mid-tone leaning to deep, and I am someone who likes to have like a full gradient of light to deep. That is just something that I personally prefer. I love this lid topper shade. It's so beautiful. It's like that sparkly, almost like baked formula that's just so smooth and pretty on the eyes. That is really what I love these Nars palettes for. I will say, don't feel like super creatively inspired looking into this palette. It's just kind of your standard everyday basic rosy toned neutral eyeshadow palette, but quality is there, longevity is there, really easy to blend, really easy to work with. So this is my number 9. Coming in at number 8, I have the Bella Beauté Bar Dead Roses eyeshadow palette, and I really don't have any complaints about this palette other than the color story, and I knew this going into buying it. It's not going to be my everyday color story, and because all of the palettes that I am ranking are so good, I really had to think through like, okay, what palettes would I be reaching for the most? So the Bella Beauté Bar Dead Roses eyeshadow palette retails for $65. It cost me $6 to ship this one, and it is $4.06 per shade. I do have a code with Bella Beauté Bar that will save you 10% off. It is an affiliate link, so I would make a small commission if you do purchase through any of my links. I do really appreciate it, you guys. It helps me out so much, but never any pressure. This palette has 3 different formulas, so you're getting mattes, multi-chromes, and duochromes in this eyeshadow palette. You're actually getting 7 multi-chrome shadows in this palette. This palette made me realize I am someone who is definitely more a lover of duochromes or triochromes, but when we enter into like the multi-chrome realm, I just could care less, and I honestly would rather do without the multi-chromes and have a less expensive palette, because I just feel like multi-chromes can really, they look beautiful in swatches, but then you put them on the lids and sometimes I just do not like how they look on my lids, at least. So specifically like the shade Ew and then like Drop Dead or As If, like they didn't work on my lids. It was way too grungy, way too deep, not something I personally felt confident in. So that would be one of the reasons that I decided to rank this palette on the lower end. I think it is an absolutely beautiful palette, the perfect combination of like Valentine and anti-Valentine. I think it was such an appropriate release for a Valentine's Day palette, but it's just not going to be something that I personally am reaching for on an everyday basis. So that is why this is my number 8. Coming in at number 7, I have the Diveroon Cosmetics Gloomy Gardens eyeshadow palette. This is a beautiful eyeshadow palette. I was so excited that they released another pre-order for their first palette, the Moth. Is it the Moth and Moon? Because after using this palette, I was like, I really wish that I had gotten their first release, and it was sold out, but they did come back with like a limited restock. This is such a beautiful, fun, grungy, kind of like different color story for the spring. When I saw them tease even just the packaging for this eyeshadow palette, I was sold. I was instantly like, yes, must have it. I think it is absolutely beautiful artwork on the outside. You're getting a really nice mirror. I just realized I haven't really been talking about the packaging in each of these. I'm so sorry. I'm failing you as a YouTube reviewer. You do get a nice mirror with this. This is magnetic pans, which I know is really important to some. I don't really care if they're magnetic pans or not, but I will say I think I'm caring more and more because it is fun to kind of mix and match shades. So it is an added bonus when you do get a magnetic pan with the palette. This palette retails for $66. It cost me $8.85 to ship this, and that equates to $5.41 per shadow. I am not taking shipping into account when I am breaking down the shadow costs per shade. And then in this palette, you are getting 5 different formulas. You're getting a duochrome, mattes, metallic, shimmer, and a multi-chrome. So the reason I am ranking this one at number 7, a little bit lower, is because while I like the color story, I feel creatively inspired, but then I start to create a look and I'm like, but wait, what do I want to do? And I am not someone who likes mint greens personally. So like this shade right here, I don't think I'll get a lot of use out of it. I really struggled to create a look with that just because I never know what to do with a bright green mint. Now, if you love mints, maybe you'll love that. I love this grungy shade right here, and I'm a huge fan of all 5 of the like special shades at the bottom. I think they're so stunning and so beautiful. But just in thinking in terms of like everyday use or creating looks, the palettes that are ranking above this, I had an easier time thinking of looks that I wanted to create than I did with this eyeshadow palette. So that is why this one is ranking at number 7. All right, coming in at number 6, I have another Bella Beauté bar eyeshadow palette, and this is the Angles of Illumination eyeshadow palette. So this is a all shimmer palette and definitely companion palette, and I knew that going in, and I feel like that's been a complaint that I've seen, is that it's, you know, an all shimmer palette. But if you know that going into buying it, like, don't buy it if you don't want an all shimmer palette. That's just my personal thought. In this palette, you are getting 16 shadows ranging from duochrome to multi-chrome. It retails for $65. I paid $9 to have this one shipped, which is really interesting. I paid $9 to ship this one, $6 to ship Dead Roses, which Dead Roses I ordered after, so maybe their shipping costs have gone down. I honestly don't know. But that equals $4.06 per shadow, so that is that exactly? Yeah, exactly the same as the Dead Roses. I know another complaint about this palette has been that it feels extremely repetitive, and the only 2 shades that I find like extremely repetitive are these 2 shades right here. They're pretty similar on the eyes. If you don't like a blue shimmery shadow, this is definitely not going to be the palette for you, but I love blues, so I have absolutely loved this palette. You are getting cardboard packaging with a really nice large mirror, and these are also magnetic pans, which I think is nice, especially for an all shimmer palette, because if you're someone who likes to like mix and match, it'd be really easy to pop these out and kind of do your own BYOP, and I love it for that. So I just think that the shades are so beautiful. I have loved this shade Sunlight. I've gotten so much use out of it, and I've just had so much fun. If I'm feeling really bored with a look, or if I feel like a look just needs a little something extra, I'll reach into this palette to just add a little pop, and I think this is such a perfect palette for that. So I understand this palette is not going to be for everyone, but for me, I feel like it just adds something pretty special to my collection, and I'm a big fan. So this is my number 6. Okay, my top 5, so hard to decide, you guys. Literally so hard to pick my top 5. But coming in at number 5, I have my Danessa Myricks Groundworks Defining Neutrals palette. I got this in my lucky bag this year, and I feel so lucky that I got this in my lucky bag. The reason I'm ranking this at number 5 is I don't reach for this palette all that much, except for every day as my brows. Every day, basically since getting this palette, I've used this shade in my brows, and I love this palette for that. I will also say it's nice to just like, if I just want something really quick and easy in the crease, this does work really well for that. And so I think as this palette progresses in life with me, as we move along in life together, I think I'll find even more use out of this. But for me, every day I'm reaching into this for my brows. I am really interested in picking up her second Groundworks palette that is more pink toned, although I'm like, do I really need that, because I don't love rosy tones? Anyway, I haven't yet used any of these shades on like the face. You can use these on the eyes or the face. There's 2 textures / formulas in here. You're getting a powder, which is the smaller of the pans, and then you're getting a cream shadow as well. I haven't yet used them as like a face contour or a bronzer or anything like that, so I can't really speak to that. But this palette does retail for $65. I did get this in my lucky bag, so I can't really tell you what it costs to ship, but you can get this at Sephora and I believe also Beautylish. There are 20 shades in this palette, so the cost per shade is $3.25. I just think in terms of like a utilitarian eyeshadow palette, this is such a valuable one, especially if you're like a working makeup artist. I've never been a working makeup artist, nor will I ever be, but I feel like this would be something so valuable to add to a kit. I don't know, I just think this is such a good palette, such a just like absolute staple, and I'm so glad that I have this. So this is my number 5. Coming in at number 4, I have the Adept Cosmetics Flying Fiddles eyeshadow palette. This is a beautiful eyeshadow palette. I was so excited when I saw them release this. I literally set an alarm to make sure that I purchased this, got it. The moment this arrived to me, I sat down to film a video because I was so inspired by the color story. And I think this is so beautiful. I'm so glad that we have a fun neutral palette from Adept, because sometimes I want to purchase every palette from them, but their palettes also feel very companion-like usually. And so I sometimes talk myself out of them for that reason. So this palette retails for $62. I paid $9.50 for shipping. The cost per shade breaks down to $4.13. And in this eyeshadow palette, you're getting 4 different formulas. You're getting blendable mattes, multi-chromes, 1 multi-chrome, 4 shimmery duochromes, and 6 shimmers. My one complaint about the color story with this eyeshadow palette is I wish we had one more matte shadow that was like a lighter matte shadow. That is my one complaint with this, but I'm not sure which shade I would switch out for that one matte shadow. Like, it would be very hard to pick the shade. Maybe Rust Bunny, I don't know. The shade Scorpion Grass, this marbled shade, I was really nervous about because I've never used a marbled shade that I can think of on my eyes before, or nothing like this, but it was so beautiful. Again, I hope that I'm posting pictures of looks that I've created with this palette, or with these palettes, over to the side. There was a look I created that with this shade that I absolutely loved, and I went on to have to use this shade like 3 additional times, like 3 days in a row. This is such a fun one. I really love the shade Daffodil as well. I think Yellow Brownin is also just such a fun one for like an ethereal sort of eye. I know that I will continue to reach into this, and I will be interested to see as we progress in the year and as I continue to use these eyeshadow palettes and bring new eyeshadow palettes into my collection. I'll be very curious to see how things rank at the end of the year. Like, potentially this will move up in the ranking or move down, who knows, but this is currently my number 4. I forgot to mention the packaging on this one. So it's like a textured, almost like nylon type of material with like the rosy, or like the flowery. I will say, like, I don't think the outer packaging is my absolute favorite. It does feel like really nice cardboard, and you are getting a really nice large mirror with this one as well. All right, moving on to my number 3 eyeshadow palette. This is my least expensive palette that I'll be ranking, and this is the Cosmic Beauty Muse eyeshadow palette. And let me tell you, I get it. I get the hype with Cosmic Beauty. They make an incredible formula, an incredible eyeshadow palette, and they keep their costs so low. I don't know how they do it, but I really appreciate them for that. So this palette, you are getting 20 different shades. It is $24, so that breaks down to just $1.20 per shade. It did cost me $13 to ship this eyeshadow palette. I think it's coming from the UK, so definitely my highest in terms of shipping. And then in this palette, you are getting 4 different formulas. You're getting matte, metallics, duochromes, and an iridescent shade. When I tell you, the mattes in this eyeshadow palette are some of the easiest mattes I've ever worked with. I was so surprised. I always get worried about mattes with indie brands, and I don't know why. Maybe that's just like an unfair thought in my head. So easy to work with, especially considering some of the colors. Like, I feel like there's just, you know, there's some different colors in this eyeshadow palette. Specifically, like, we have this fun, like, peony sort of shade, some greens, just some really fun shadows. I absolutely love the shade Antique down here. It's a really beautiful kind of like iridescent, like one of those like blue red, but like more iridescent blue red metallic shades. It's so pretty. I created some looks with this eyeshadow palette again that I really enjoyed. I absolutely want to purchase more palettes from Cosmic Brushes or Cosmic Beauty, just based off of my experience with this eyeshadow palette, and I'm so excited to continue to play around with this. I think this is going to be such a fun palette for the springtime. and I'm just so impressed. Oh, I also love the shade Ambient, which is again kind of like a blue brown shade. So pretty. Packaging on this, I will say the cardboard packaging does feel a little bit cheap, but you are getting, again, like a pretty nice size mirror with this palette as well. So this is my number 3. All right, coming in at number 2, I have this one from Unearthly Cosmetics. It's the Sorceress Smoke palette. And I had wanted this palette for so long, but then I decided to go with Fall Magic over Sorcerer's Smoke because I was like, Sorcerer's Smoke feels like a color story I can find in my palette collection. Fast forward, I loved Fall Magic, and then I was like, okay, I need Sorcerer's Smoke. So this is what this palette is looking like. It is such a beautiful eyeshadow palette. This one retails for $65. I paid $9.58 for shipping. The cost per shade in this eyeshadow palette is $5.41. And in this palette, you are getting 5 different formulas. You're getting duochrome, matte, metallic, shimmer, and a multi-chrome shadow in this palette. You have pretty sturdy cardboard packaging with this palette. Definitely a smaller mirror, but it's also like a more narrow palette, and I have no complaints about the mirror. This I love because it is like an approachable neutral palette for every day, but then it like there's definitely like pops and a twist with this, so you can kind of go from like week to weekend with this palette and really have so much fun with it. I love the 4 green shades. I created a green eyeshadow look that I absolutely loved with this palette, but I've also created some really beautiful just neutral shadow or neutral looks. The shade Sorceress is such a beautiful, just sparkly shade that I wore to work and absolutely loved and got so many compliments on it. So I love this because I feel like I can really do like something just so punchy on the eye, but I can also really tone it down and also get day-to-day use out of this eyeshadow palette. So that's why I decided to rank this one above like Flying Fiddles, for example, just because I feel like day to day I will get more use out of the Sorceress Smoke. So this one is my number 2. And then coming in at number 1, you guys, it is the Ensley Rain Cold Moon eyeshadow palette. What a freaking stunning eyeshadow palette. So this eyeshadow palette retails for $72.22. You are getting 21 shades in this palette. So this is the largest palette. And one thing I will say is I know a lot of people complain about the prices of Ensley Rain, but I feel like you're getting like a large palette, like you're getting a ton of shades. So sometimes I'm like a little bit confused why about that, even though I've sat there before and been like, wow, that's really expensive. Anyway, you're getting 21 shades in this palette. I did pay $13.93 for shipping. Cost per shade is $3.43. I do actually very recently have a code with Ensley Rain, which makes me so excited. And that'll also save you 10% off if you are ever interested in picking anything up from Ensley Rain. In this palette, you are getting 6 different formulas, so we're getting the most amount of formulas out of any of the palettes that I have reviewed. You are getting 10 luxurious mattes and 11 specialty shimmers, so that breaks down to 4 multi-dimensional holochromes, 1 multi-chrome, 3 duochromes, 2 ultra sparkly shimmers, and 1 classic satin shimmer. I love the ratio of mattes to shimmers in this palette. I know I was just talking about like I don't mind a companion palette with shimmers, like an all shimmer palette, but I do like when a palette has almost equal parts shimmers to mattes. I really do like that. I love that there is a bit of a gradient with the mattes in this eyeshadow palette, and this is just, first of all, I love the cool toned color story of this. This is like perfection. I like that we have dusty purples, we have browns, we have this sage green, we have this really beautiful kind of like slate bluey gray sort of shade. But what I really love about this palette, this is one that I do feel like I can easily also go from like week to weekend. I can do one matte and just pop one of these shades, one of the special shades on my lids, and it looks like I spent so much time doing my makeup to make this really punchy look, but it really took me like 3 minutes, no joke. I think it's absolutely stunning. The shade Storm Fairy is such a beautiful shimmery blue shade, and I've been so into my blues, so it definitely holds a special place in my heart for that. This does not have a mirror, and it does feel like cheaper. It's definitely like cheaper cardboard packaging. It's not like a super weighted palette, but it does have magnetic pans in here, so you can kind of mix and match, especially if you have a number of the Ensley Rain palettes. I just think this is such a special one. I truly don't have anything like this in my collection, and I feel like even if I went and swatched out some of these special metallic shades, I wouldn't find similar shades amongst my single shadows. So this is my #1 palette out of the 11 palettes that I have most recently tried. I already feel like I have a full drawer of new palettes that I need to get like moving and grooving on testing. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I know I do this to myself, but if there's any new palettes that have released, whether or not you know that I have them or you think maybe I have them or you just want to see a review, let me know what palettes you're most interested in seeing a review on next. I would love to hear from you guys. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. That is going to wrap it up for this quarter's palette week. But don't fear, we have plenty more eyeshadow palette content coming. We definitely have round 3 in my Palette Madness series coming very, very soon. So thank you guys for all of your support as always, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye.